Arrived in warm and sunny Barcelona just in time for the EFMD Global Fairs by Hyatt. However, this year we're adding an exciting hybrid element to the Global Fairs by preparing to stream live from the EAE Business School in Barcelona, Spain.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the from EAE Business School Barcelona, as you just saw from the video. Now, before we get into our keynote of day 2 with Equinor, I want to first introduce you to the EAE Business School Barcelona. We have Dean Enrique Ordich, who will say a few words of welcome to his campus.
Thank you so much. I'm so proud of being here. This is Enrico, the Dean of EAE Business School, Barcelona. EAE Business School is proud to be the co-hosting school of the EFMD Global Fairs by Hyatt. The EFMD Global Fairs will welcome thousands of students and alumni from more than 100 business schools and universities from the EAE EFMD network, and connect them with thousands of recruiters from nearly hundreds leading employers. So I'm so happy to be one of the co-hosts of this Global Fairs. Thank you for counting on us.
Thank you so much for those words of welcome. It's an incredible pleasure, and we brought a hybrid element to this edition of the EFMD Global Fairs. We are here today at EAE welcoming literally thousands of students. So we're broadcasting live from the campus, and we're just so excited to be here. So we thank you, Dean Ordich, for your hospitality and for your entire careers and employability team. Thank you so much, and we will see you around. Thank you. And now we are going to get into the first keynote we have of day 2 of the EFMD Global Fairs. We have with us today a very special speaker from one of our main sponsors, from Equinor. We are honored to welcome Åshild Hanne Larsen. Åshild is head of Subsurface Excellence in Digital at Equinor. Now, before we introduce you, and I have a number of questions for her, and we'll also be fielding questions from the audience as well, I will show right now an Equinor video for those of you who are unfamiliar with the company.
Takk til havet. Takk til vinden. Takk til rå muskelkraft. Og like rå hjernekraft. Takk til Marianne, som har fløyet 10 000 timer. Og Kenneth, som har stekt 60 000 speiling. Og Rolf, Bjarne, Fernanda, Anne, Olav og store og små leverandører. Takk til de som var med fra starten. Og de som nettopp har begynt. Takk til de som har offret mye. Og de som aldri slutter å utfordre oss. mer enn noen gang for å nå klimamålene. Takk for innsatsen, og takk til dere der hjemme.
Excellent. And now welcome Åshild. And I want to introduce you to our audience today. We have Åshild is coming in from Stavanger in Norway. Pleasure to have you with us.
It's great to be here, Amber. Thank you for welcoming me.
Our pleasure. So let me just share with the audience a bit about your background, and we're going to be welcoming questions both from Campus Live as well as the thousands of students who are joining the EFMD Global Fairs from more than 100 schools these 3 days. So first of all, Åshild Hanne Larsen is Head of Subsurface Excellence in Digital at Equinor, a very intriguing title that I'm sure she's going to share a lot more about. And she is an award-winning technology executive, widely recognized as a thought leader and speaker within the IT technology area. Ms. Larsen started her career with Equinor in 1993 and has broad experience from professional and executive roles, including leadership of corporate transformations and large-scale transformational change efforts. She holds an MBA from Heriot-Watt University in Scotland and a Master of Arts degree from the Universitat Bielefeld. Ms. Larsen is a 2021 Global CIO 100. She's also winner of the 2020 Executive GRIT Awards, CIO of the Year Europe 2019, Leader of the Year 2019, and one of Norway's 50 Leading Women in Technology 2019. It truly is an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you, Amber. I'm truly not as impressive as you made it sound, but I'm really glad to be here despite that.
And no, I know our audience they're eager to learn more about careers and connecting with employers these days, and just hearing about professional journeys and career trajectories. How would you describe your own professional journey?
Well, it's been perhaps a bit unusual because my first job in Equinor was as an offshore catering assistant. That means I basically did kitchen and cleaning duties on an oil rig offshore. And I did that for my first 6 years in the company before moving on to other roles onshore. And I actually still meet people whose beds I've made and whose waste paper basket I've emptied. So I think it's fair to say that I have moved from the very sort of lowest career rungs in Equinor to some of the highest. So it's been a very interesting journey for me, I have to say.
And how did you think about the opportunities and the type of work that you wanted to engage in?
Well, I have to be honest, and this might disappoint you a bit, but I never had this optimal, clear career plan. For me, it's been more about being sort of fairly open to different roles, different types of opportunities. What I really wanted and what was important to me was to work with people I felt were interesting and where I could learn something, and also feel that I had some sort of impact, that I could make a difference either on a small or a larger scale. So that's what's been driving me, I would say, through all of these years.
And what was it that you learned in the process as that career journey took you? And like you said, you didn't have a clear plan, which is actually the reality of so many of the thousands of talent in our network. They're studying at the world's leading business schools and universities, and often looking to find that passion or to find that next step of their career trajectories. So what did you learn? What did you learn in this process that you feel would be useful to share with our talent, and especially those that might be setting out on the journey or those looking for a career change?
There were quite a lot of learnings, but to put them a little bit in context, I will share a couple of facts about my journey, because after having worked offshore as a catering assistant, I moved into HR, did HR professional executive positions for a few years, then did a complete turnaround when I was asked to move into the technology area and become Equinor's Global CIO. That was a big shift for me and a big surprise, not only for me, but for the rest of the organization. I started working with a team of technical professionals who, on the day when my name was announced, they later told me they were sort of eagerly awaiting this announcement. And when my name and picture came up with my history from HR, they looked at each other, and the first person who spoke said that this must be a mistake. So it's been a very interesting journey where I've moved across areas, and I've taken on challenges that I perhaps on paper was not even qualified for, and moved into areas where I had no history or no background. And that's been extremely interesting to me. So I've never imagined really at the outset of my career having some of these roles. And I think my key learning, Amber, that I would like to share is that you shouldn't put limitations on yourself and think that your brain and your education only works within one specific area. It is so rewarding to be open to changing roles and changing functions. And it's extremely interesting, but you have to be prepared for a steep but very fun learning journey when you do it.
Excellent advice, and especially as we contemplate careers that will be a lot longer than they were in the past and will be working into later years. So you started at Equinor in 1993. I find that talent, when they're looking for that next opportunity, they often look for a brand or a specific job objective. For someone who's been with Equinor since 1993, how about identifying that right workplace culture, and any advice for them on how they can find a culture that works for them? Because it seems like your culture has worked for you.
It has, and I can perhaps say a little bit about what took me to Equinor. I was really fascinated by the mission of the company. I mean, today, what gets me up in the morning is the thought that as a company, we deliver energy to 170 million people every day. And it's that energy that enables people to work, to travel, to cook, to create. And I just find it extremely motivating to be part of that. And what made me stay is perhaps the interesting colleagues I have, the fact that in Equinor you are allowed to move around and do different things, and also the fact that whenever I need help, my colleagues are always there for me. So that's my experience. But your question was more along, well, how can you find that kind of culture that really works for you? And I would start by trying to find out the values of the company and how these are lived, because that's been a key thing for me in Equinor. And also checking out the reputation of the company. And there are lots of ways of doing that. You can speak with people in your network. You can even visit different apps where you are able to check out feedback from current and previous employees. And of course, it's important events such as these as well, of course, where you can speak to recruiters from the different companies to use that opportunity. So that would be my advice.
Excellent. So I can't emphasize that enough, what you said. It's the networking, it's the asking for advice. And our talent are so fortunate to be studying or alumni of some of the world's leading academic institutions. So making the most of the power of those networks and leveraging those networks to ask for advice on the culture. And as Åshild has shared as well, there's different indexes where you can check the reputation. But I love the point that you made as well about looking at the mission, looking at the vision, what are their core values, and really looking at this even at the start of a selection process and using this on this language on the CV, on your cover letter, in your LinkedIn about statement. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much. For someone who's been for some years now in her workplace, it's good to have that advice. Now, we recently did a hired survey of more than 1,100 students and graduates from our EFMD Global Network, and we found that talent is now attracted in 80% of the cases to remote work opportunities. How has the Equinor corporate culture been affected by the remote work culture, if at all?
I would say that pre-COVID, we were very much focused on working from the office. But of course, like everyone else during COVID, we were forced to do everything remotely, even tasks like safety inspections. And I think that changed both the culture of the company, but also the expectations of current and future employees, because flexibility was given, and that is something that many of us value. And as a consequence, in Equinor, we now do hybrid working, where we split our time between the office, where we can socialize or do tasks together, where it's actually better that we are in the same room. But we also do work a bit from home every week. So I, for one, appreciate that flexibility.
Very good. And diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is such an important factor for the talent in our network, and especially for the organizations that we're finding that so many of our recruiters and the companies have that DEI focus, diversity, equity, and inclusion, EDI, call it what you want. But basically, they're putting certain importance on certain elements. What would you say Equinor is doing to expand your diversity, equity, and inclusion goals in general?
First, I have to say that we have a firm belief in the value of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because we just firmly think that that leads to better business decisions when you have multiple perspectives around the table. So what we have done is to set an ambition that by 2025, all of our teams should be diverse and inclusive. And to realize that, we started by putting measurements in place that go all across the company and supported by a dashboard for leaders. We've also set some specific targets, for instance, in recruitment, where we aim for a 50-50% balance in gender and nationality when we recruit, both when it comes to graduates, but also experienced hires. And we've also focused a lot on DEI internally in the organization because, well, having targets and tracking numbers is one thing, but it's also about how open an organization is to actually welcoming different perspectives. So lots of us in Equinor, we have attended workshops on unconscious bias and diversity and inclusion. We have taken made choices at corporate level, for instance, to implement global parental leave for all employees. And we also do quite a bit when it comes to taking on the challenge of attracting girls to STEM subjects and females to technology, which is a particular passion of mine, I have to confess. So we have a Heroes of Tomorrow program targeted at younger kids. And we also have partnerships with different networks promoting women in tech and also attracting girls to especially ICT subjects. So I think we do quite a bit, but I have to be honest and say that while I feel that we're really moving in the right direction, there is still work to do. And I believe that's true for most companies across the world, actually. Getting from the goals and the numbers to the actual inclusion and that feeling of psychological safety where you feel that you can take everything that you are to work and be appreciated for it, that is definitely the end goal.
Excellent. Now, I want to take this opportunity to ask some questions that we have coming in from the audience. When did you find out that the petroleum industry is something you're really interested in? And what is keeping you within that industry?
Oh, good question. You know, I was born on a small island in the north of Norway. And to me, oil and energy has really always been a part of my existence, so to speak, and a big part of creating the Norwegian society. So I was fascinated by that ever since I was small. And I really found it interesting to try to understand more about this industry that is so important for Norway and so important for the world. What made me stay is the changes that we are going through now, the energy transition, the focus on net zero that Equinor has, and the situation that we're in now in Europe, particularly where there's a war going on and the focus on energy accessibility and energy security is increasing. I just find it incredibly motivating to be a part of that and to be able to play a role and drive a change from within the company. So that's what's done it for me.
Excellent. Now we'll take another question. My experience has been that most traditional Norwegian businesses are not open to switching roles without a long experience, and advertised roles require long niche experience. How did you get that opportunity?
A good question, and we'll probably talk about that as well. But for me, it was about trying to do a good job, whatever job I had, how small or big it was. And it was also about getting people in the organization to notice me and to sponsor me. That really helps. And as a consequence of that, I have gotten opportunities that I was on paper not qualified at all. Take the CIO role, for instance. I don't have a technical background. I worked 10 years of my life in HR, but the company still believed that I could do it and that I could be a translator between business and technology. And when you dare to say yes to opportunities like that, you learn.
Excellent. Now, a question about which phase of your career do you see as the most challenging, now looking back with that hindsight, and how did you overcome it?
Oh, well, I think that there have been challenging times, but you see, Amber, I'm a born optimist, so I tend to take every challenge as a learning opportunity. But there have been times, of course, for instance, when I was having kids, where I was a bit worried about how that would impact my job and would impact me. But actually, Equinor is an extremely flexible employer, so I got all the space that I needed to sort of adapt to that new situation. And I've also honestly found that becoming a mom has helped me to understand where I am sort of irreplaceable, and that's not in Equinor. Lots of people can do my job, but only I can be the mom of my kids.
Absolutely.
So that work-life balance is also important.
Absolutely. And now a question from Imra. As a big supporter of lifelong learning, what are the learning opportunities that Equinor is offering in terms of both graduates and other employees?
I would say that we, as a company, we have a lot of focus on learning. We have a huge internal university with lots of different departments. I have been very active in shaping the digital academy, for instance. So you get an opportunity to do formal training both internally and externally. But for me, the biggest learning opportunities have really been offered by my colleagues. And that's another thing that I would like to highlight about the Equinor culture, this enormous willingness to help and to share. I have never been in a situation where I have needed support or advice and I haven't gotten it when I ask a colleague. They are always there for you, and we're really good at sharing experiences and sharing learnings across. So that's also part of what has made me stay, I think.
So you talk about the support of colleagues. Have you had a mentor throughout your career? And if so, can you share more? Because talent are often asking, well, how do I even identify a mentor? Has there been someone in your career that when you fall, and we all fall or stumble or hit a roadblock, has helped you get back on your feet, keep on going, moving forward with a smile on your face? Has there been someone?
There have been multiple people, so it depends on how long you give me here, Amber. But yes, I have had and I have been a mentor. I'm currently mentoring about 5 people, and I find it extremely rewarding because regardless of your formal role in the relationship, it's sort of a two-way street where you're on a journey together, where you connect, you discuss, you share, and you're curious. And along the way, you learn and adjust together. But the most powerful mentoring experience I've had was perhaps when a while back I found myself in a new context where the approaches that I had relied on previously and that had made me successful before suddenly didn't really work anymore. So I felt that I wasn't able to bring my views across in the constructive manner that I intended. And honestly, I felt I struggled a little bit to navigate, and I spent a lot of energy trying to change the people who were part of my situation. And I found that naturally enough very frustrating. And looking back on it, it was stupid, really, because how can doing more of what is not working bring a different result? But at that time, I had an external professional mentor, and that was truly a lifesaver for me in that situation because she made me realize that the only person you can actually change is yourself. And that continuing with these approaches that clearly didn't work anymore, that will only wear you down. So she helped me by doing a bit of a deep dive into myself and by asking questions and challenging me so that I was able to expand my thinking and my repertoire, so to speak. And I have to be honest and say it was a challenging period to go through, but at the end, I came out of it as a stronger and more well-rounded leader, and generally, I think a wiser person. So having the right mentor at the right time can really be crucial, I think, both for your own personal development and for advice when it comes to making both professional and personal choices. That's my experience, at least.
Excellent. So our talent has heard it, the importance of having a mentor. You don't get to such a successful career trajectory and making these choices along the road without having those guides for professional guidance. So we'll take another question from the audience. Equinor has been at the forefront driving transition to renewables. Does your organization consider imagining projects as products and adopting agile working methods, renewables as a product?
Well, we do actually work more and more agile, especially in the technology area where I am. So I'm not part of the renewables business as such, so I don't work with that on a daily basis, but I know that they are also testing out these methods and looking at areas to focus on in renewables. Currently, it's mostly offshore wind and solar where we are, but we also do, in addition to renewables, a lot of low carbon solutions.
Excellent. And I'll just remind our audience that we're fielding questions, so don't hesitate to put them there in the chat. We have a question now from Nishit. Any new energy business that Equinor is venturing into, and what skills, so let's hear about the skills, must now the oil and gas professionals gain to transition to an environmental, social, governance, ESG, and sustainability role?
That's a really good question. And I think, yes, there are requirements for new competence, but at the same time, what we have found when we started up our renewables business is that the competence and the experience that we have from oil and gas is actually fairly relevant. Look at the subsurface, for instance, where I am, which focuses on discovering and producing oil and gas from reservoirs around the world. We can use that same competence to identify reservoirs where we can capture and store carbon, for instance. So I do think the focus on ESG and sustainability is increasing, and Equinor has set a very clear ambition that by 2050 we are going to be a net zero company. But that doesn't mean that the existing competence isn't relevant. I think about 60-70% of our renewables business is actually populated by employees that originally started in oil and gas. So there's lots of opportunities, even with a subsurface background.
Excellent. Now we have another question, and this is a specific one, but no doubt helpful for some in the audience. I have 14 plus years ship design experience, master from NTNU, entrepreneurial experience, and just completed my MBA. How do you recommend a career change or switching into management roles?
I think with that background, you should definitely have the profile to do it, but you also have to have the inclination to want to lead and develop people, because that's what it's really about. So if you're interested in leadership opportunities, I would perhaps start with roles where you have direct leadership of teams, and then work my way up to becoming a leader of leaders and so on. Because having that experience as a first line leader, I think, is an important qualifier to succeed longer term as you move up the leadership ladder.
Excellent. Now let's take another question here from the audience. Okay, we can go, let's go with this one. How does digital play into the strategy of Equinor? It's in your title. And what is a passion project of yours?
Ooh, I love that question. Well, digital is key to us, and technology as such has been key to us ever since we were established 50 years ago. So we're really a very technology-focused company. I have the responsibility for everything digital within the subsurface, and I have a lot of pet projects. But perhaps one that I'm particularly fascinated with right now is called artificial intelligence for maturation. It's a technology that is sort of a pathfinder. You can imagine it as a robot of sorts that finds its way through a maze, and we use that to identify the optimal drilling paths in a field. And by using that technology, we are able to automate a lot. So the manual work that used to happen by engineers has been changed because the technology just processes millions and millions of opportunities and serves on a platter to the engineers the different opportunities that they select from. And we're able to, with that technology, you should never have asked me this question because I can go on for hours on this topic, but we're able with that technology to save time, to operate safer, and to create more value, because we are even able to get to, through that technology, well targets that we haven't reached before. So it also has a direct impact on increased production. You're regretting this now, Amber, I know, but I'll shut up now.
No, not at all. No, very insightful. And we have another hot topic right now. The Russia-Ukraine war has brought the energy crisis to the forefront political debate and people's concerns, especially in Europe. Has the strategy of Equinor changed to match this new reality?
The strategy remains firm, but I do think that we as a company have adapted to the new reality. First of all, I think we're all feeling that our role as an energy provider to Europe has become extremely critical. One of the things that Europe depends on is gas, and we were actually able to increase our gas production by 17-18% compared to last year to try to cover some of the needs that are there. So I would say that these are very challenging times, but as a company, we're very aware of the role that we can play and the difference that we can make. And I know that our CEO, Anders, is in constant dialogue with the nations of Europe and looking at how Equinor can support in both supplying secure, accessible, and hopefully also affordable energy.
Excellent. Thank you for your response to that. Now, a question from Henderson. What is the organizational culture like at Equinor, and what is Equinor's definition of the new world of work?
Well, I'm probably indoctrinated, so you have to take my answer for what it is, because I've lived in this culture for so long. But what I find is that it's a very open culture, a culture of learning, a culture of sharing, where the value isn't in the information that you have and sort of keep to yourself. It's about how we can deliver together. And that's one of the things I really appreciate. When it comes to the new world of work, to us, it is more of a hybrid world, as I mentioned. We do believe that there will be situations and tasks where it's good for us to be at the office, either to socialize as a team or to work on a task where we perhaps need to be creative together. But we also do quite a bit of remote work.
Excellent. Now, I knew this next question was coming when you talked about your 5 mentees. Any plans, if we can share the next question here, any plans to adopt new mentees from this EFMD Global Affairs? I'll be glad to learn more and be guided by you. Not to put you on the spot, Åshild.
No, but I do. I don't only mentor internal people. I do accept people who reach out to me because when I have the time. And I do it in different ways. I'm part of some formal programs. I also have people who I just speak to once in a while when they want to discuss something and have advice. So why don't you just reach out to me via LinkedIn? You can find me there and we can discuss it.
Excellent. Great idea. And I remind everyone here the importance of LinkedIn with our recruiters and personalizing those invitations and reaching out and asking for advice. So fantastic. Now, I'm going to ask you another question with regards to your career plan. And you said, I didn't have one. I don't want to disappoint you, but I didn't have one. Did you ever have a plan B, at least if things went wrong?
No.
You're talking to a careers professional who always had one.
I know you're probably horribly disappointed in me now, Amber, but as you said, I didn't have a firm plan A. I didn't have a firm plan B either, because I have just been focused on sort of following and sometimes trying to create opportunities and targeting people that I admired and I wanted to work for. And generally, I'm an optimist at heart. So I've sort of always thought that if people offer you a job, they do it because they want you to succeed. And if something goes wrong, it's a learning opportunity. So no A, B, or C plans here, unfortunately, perhaps. But honestly, it's actually served me quite well.
And what are the biggest lessons you've learned along that journey?
I think I mentioned it already, this being open to new opportunities, daring to say yes to things that you're perhaps not feeling that you're qualified for or that the time is right. So I think that's the key learning I had. I did say no to an opportunity at one point in time. I had a boss who wanted me to take on a role, but I was very comfortable in the situation I was in. So I said no once, and she came back and I said no the second time and said, if you approach me again, I'm going to be really mad at you. But she came the third time together with the leader for the unit that they wanted me to lead. And I ended up saying yes. And the reason I did that was that these were two people that I really trusted. And I felt that if they thought that this was a good opportunity for me, maybe I should get off my high horse a little bit and actually listen. And they turned out that they were right, because that role actually set me on the trajectory towards executive HR positions, which again have led me to where I am today. So I can only be grateful for those lessons.
And the key factors when you said no the first two times, was it more of you were in your comfort zone? Was there an element of lack of confidence in that new proposed role?
I think it was being in my comfort zone, in a role I was very comfortable with, good exposure, knew what I was doing. And I just had my second child, so I was just feeling a little bit set in my ways, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it was good that they came back to me and challenged me, because that put me on a completely new track.
Yeah. And it's what you say. Sometimes it's these decisions that appear insignificant at the time can be life-changing. So I want to take another question from the audience, asking for personal advice for the new young graduates starting at Equinor in September 2023.
Ooh, are you one of those? Good. No, I think come in with an open mind, ask questions, try to build your network, utilize the formal network that we have for the graduate, but also think about sort of scanning the organization and look at where are the learning opportunities, where are the people who can contribute something to you and that you can contribute to as well. The network, the power of the networks in Equinor is actually amazing. So getting in the door and starting to orient yourself is great. And if you run into a problem or you want a piece of advice, well, I'm only a Teams call away if you're internally. So feel free to reach out to me when you join.
Very nice. And there's a couple more questions coming in. So let's go with one here. For someone without any experience in energy or technology, someone from management background wanting to start the career, what suggestion would you give? So we're looking at, looks like a complete career changer with regards to industry.
No, I would first think about what are your key selling points? What are the experiences and the personal skills or traits that you have that are relevant regardless of industry? And how can you build on that? And I would also think about, is there one or two sort of smaller things you can do, trainings or courses or something that would sort of help put you on that trajectory and just show that you're really meaning it in a way. You've made that choice and you're working actively to qualify yourself. I have worked in so many areas where I didn't have any formal qualifications or any experience, but it's possible to be successful without having that background. So I think you should just go for it.
And like you said, it's honing those skills and upskilling. And I'll just take this moment to remind everyone that our Hired EFMD community has access to Upskill, Hired Upskill, which is available on your gethired.global platforms, which is powered by Coursera. So access to more than 8,000 courses, guided projects, and professional certifications to start getting those credentials and skills and experiences relevant to energy, relevant to technology, as our viewer was saying, does not have, getting them on the CV and into your profile and being able to talk about those in a selection process. Okay, we'll take another question here. And would you say the energy industry is an easy one to get into as a recent graduate?
Oh, that's a difficult one, because I was a graduate once, but my goodness, it's been a few years since then. What I can say is that we do try to really make the transition into Equinor an easy one. We have networks, and we have the peer coaching, and we have opportunities with mentors as well in our graduate program. So I do think we are very conscious of that, and are doing our best to sort of ease you in to the energy industry and to the company.
Nice.
But
So yeah,
it's going to be interesting for me to hear later on, when you've done this transition into Equinor, whether we have actually been successful, or if there's something we should adjust or change.
so setting them up for success. And do you want to shed any light on your onboarding process? Because it does sound, with your corporate university and the learning and development opportunities, what does your onboarding process look like? Give us a vision of that first 90 days on the job at Equinor.
Now, when you come in, of course, you have a leader, you have a team, you are set up with all the practicalities, you get offered training through the university. Often we appoint a buddy, which is a colleague in the same area that can help you sort of build your network and help you with any practical questions. So we do have a lot of that. Of course, we also spend those first 90 days looking at what will your contributions be? What will your key tasks be? How are you going to be measured? What does success look like? And so on. And we have a tool that we call People at Equinor that we use to facilitate that process.
Very good. Now we have a question about requirements, and if there's any specific requirements Equinor would want to see when it comes to recent graduates.
Well, there must be some kind of professional education, of course, as a basis for applying with us for a graduate position. And then we do graduate recruitment centers where we test you on different tasks and look at how are you collaborating with others, how are you dealing with challenges or questions. So I think being a bit forward-leaning, open-minded, dare to take lead in group work, those kinds of things are I think things that can make you stand out a little bit.
And just to remind our talent out there, you also have access to the Aon assessments through your GetHired.global platform to start by doing a realistic self-assessment of your profile and identifying what are those areas that you really need to build on to get that next opportunity. And I see George's question there about the requirements, and it just reminds me the differences we have between the men and women. And I know gender diversity is important for you, Åshild, and just the fact that many women, I find, will wait until they meet nearly all of the requirements before applying for that job. And as I always tell my talent, if you already meet all of those requirements, well, it's probably not the best opportunity for you, because there's very little or no room for growth. And whereas the difference in men is that they might not even meet 50% and they're already applying. Well, that's more the approach. I say you meet 70 to 80%, and you should be applying to that. But in the very least, start identifying your profiles, the potential match with your target organizations, be networking and connecting with the alumni from your organizations, and asking for that advice.
I just want to underline that point, Amber, because it's so important. If you can cross all the T's and dot all the I's, you're already overqualified. So there's no room to learn. So dare to sort of go for something where you can stretch yourself a little bit.
Absolutely.
I 100% agree.
And now these 3 days we're in the midst of the EFMD Global Affairs by Hired. Equinor is one of our gold sponsors. We have the virtual stand, and you can go over and meet with Åshild's colleagues and ask for this advice. I wanted to ask you, as we have participated in virtual career fairs in the past, but some new talent that it's their first time. Any advice for them on how to best engage target employers, both here at the fair and then beyond the fair?
No, you broke up there a little bit, but I think I heard your question. Well, it starts with sort of being proactive, reaching out, informing yourself about the company, asking questions. And if you're interested in working for a company, try to figure out, as we talked about earlier, is the culture a fit for you? Check out their pages, their career pages, but also think about who in your network could provide you an opening to someone you could talk with to learn whether this is the opportunity for you.
And, you know, I it's a phrase I don't like to say, but it's true. And you said, think about who in your network, and it's not just what you know, but also who you know, and identifying who are those key individuals at your target companies, target organizations, in your network. Do you know the people in the industry associations and everyone connected here today and asking these questions? So you're already making all the right moves and steps for that next step of your career. What is it? Give me something that you hope that the audience has learned from you today.
Oh, okay. Well, perhaps what I hope I've left you with is that career is not, nor should it be, a linear journey from A to B. It can take so many interesting twists and turns, but you have to be open to taking chances and saying yes to opportunities that you haven't perhaps considered yourself. And I want also to underline that your aim doesn't have to be a specific position or a specific level. At least to me, the journey of my career has always been the most interesting thing, to learn and to have impact as you go. So that would be my hope, that you're left with some of that at least.
Excellent, for sure. And now I want to take another question from the audience. And it doesn't surprise me. Our students are very focused on the ranking and the positioning of their school. And we're the organization of the world's top business schools and universities. Doesn't matter for Equinor. Is the ranking or positioning of the school important when applying for the graduate program?
It does play a role, of course, but as we are focused more and more on diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think we're also expanding our thought pattern around educational institutions. So we're trying to get away from where we perhaps been, where we sort of recruit from the institutions that we know from before and where we went ourselves, and trying to expand that a bit more. So I don't think any educational institution excludes you. It's more about having the right educational basis, having the right level of a degree, and then when you come into the interview and into the assessment center, showing who you are and what you can do.
Excellent. In the assessment center, and again, you can practice your assessment. And I've read a lot of the thought pieces in your work, Åshild, and we have a question that I know is directly related to one of your passions when it comes to gender equality or inequality, from Georgia. This is what I wanted to highlight. Do you believe nowadays gender inequality is still very accentuated, especially for women graduates?
Well, I think it depends a little bit on the area that you're in, but in general, for our industry, we have a gap when it comes to gender equality, which I personally find extremely sad, because there is room for more women in our industry. And I think as a woman in the industry myself, I have had every opportunity to make a difference. So I wish that we, as companies perhaps, and as an industry, could become even better at outlining how we could be the best employers also for women. So I would just welcome any women into to the industry. You know, there are so many challenges that the world is facing right now, including in our industry, and to solve those problems and address them in the proper way, we really need to access all the brain power that is available. And that includes both men and women, and all kinds of experiences and nationalities and views and perspectives. And that's why I'm so personally so passionate about diversity and inclusion, getting those perspectives around the table so that we can use them to ultimately solve challenging problems and make better decisions.
I can't highlight that enough, and we've been hearing that time and time again from our employers here these days, the focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. And you'll be seeing it again. We talk about that in our live CV clinics. We have another one coming up this afternoon from 4 to 5 p.m. CEST, the blind recruiting. We won't get into those details now, but something that you'll definitely want to join the CV clinic and see how recruiters are screening and jumbling up the words in their applicant tracking systems to blind out certain areas that would make the recruiter blind to age and to racial background, personal interest, sometimes even the schools or qualifications, and just really trying to make it more fair to increase that gender diversity in organizations. And it's also proven, it's an area of passion for me as well, that the increase in gender diversity and racial equality has a direct impact as well on the revenues of the organization. So yeah, thank you for sharing your perspective on that. Now, a personal question. What is the best piece of advice anyone has ever given you?
Ooh, I think I'll share one very personal and one work related. I had a grandmother. She was one of 4 kids, the only girl. Her family was very poor. So even if she was the only one who actually did well in school, she had to end her schooling after the 7th grade because the money that was there needed to go to educate her brothers. And as a consequence of that, when she had kids herself, including my mom, she made sure that all of them had an education. And for us grandchildren, ever since I could walk, she told me that I could choose to do or be whatever I wanted. So she instilled that confidence in me already from an early age, and in all her other grandchildren as well. And that has really made a big difference in my life. From a professional perspective at work, I think the best advice that I have been given came in a situation where I was offered a role I didn't really feel fully ready or qualified for. But then the person who was trying to push me into that role told me that, you know what, Åshild, sometimes you have to trust what others are seeing in you, even if you haven't yet discovered it for yourself. And those I found were very wise words, because they offered me the job because they were certain that I could do it. And they were also there to give me the support I needed to succeed. And to me, that was an important lesson. Back to your point, thinking that you have to cross off every single item in a job description to be relevant. I just want to underline again that is so not true. You have to go for positions where there is room to grow.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing very personal story and your professional support that you've felt. We have another question along these lines. As one of Norway's female leaders, is there something like a club or a network where you discuss topics as to how to encourage more women to step into leading roles? Are you involved with any professional women networking organizations or similar?
Yeah, I am. And I actually, on behalf of Equinor, I own quite a few of the partnerships we have with, for instance, the ODA Women in Tech Network, the Girl Project ADA at the Norwegian Technical University in Trondheim. And there are also unofficial networks. Internally in Equinor, we have a Women in Equinor network and a Women in Equinor Tech network that I sponsor. And I'm also a member of Petro Ladies, which is a network in the Stavanger region. So I really believe in the power of networks. And if there's one thing that I try to tell people like you, or when I speak at events like these and others, is the power of this butterfly effect that I like to call it. That if all of us once every week speak positively about another female, we can actually create a movement that results in more females in leadership, more females in board positions, more females with impact. And don't get me wrong, I don't think that this is about equality to me, giving everyone equal opportunities regardless of gender, background, perspective, educational institutions. But I do think, especially in our industry, that there is a gap, and I use everything I have when it comes to power and networks to try to speak positively about other females and promote them for roles and opportunities. I just wish everyone would do that, because as I said, that could really create a global movement. So that's my perhaps small request to you.
Yes. You have done that today as well. What a compelling effect, and the butterfly effect that you're having just with your words as we're broadcasting to the students here live on campus following you at EAE Business School Barcelona, and more than 100 other schools around the globe. And our talent, we have 3 million students studying at our more than 700 schools that will be watching as well. So we thank you. And I'm going to ask you one final question. And I asked you for different pieces of advice at different times. What is that one thing you wish someone had told you at the start of your career?
I think I would have wished for someone to tell me that you don't have to be perfect, or don't have to try to pretend that you're something you're not. I don't know about you guys, but I know at the outset of my career, I was very sort of conscious about doing things right and doing the right things. And I could spend 4 hours on a Friday night trying to match a font with a picture in a presentation. And I mean, it's good to be eager to do a good job, but that was a waste of time. And throughout my years, I've observed many leaders trying to sort of fit into what they think a leader should be. And I was like that too at the beginning of my career, but I came to a point where I decided that to be the best leader I can be and to use my energy on sensible things, I have to stop wasting that energy on trying to be something I'm not. So back to that point of being able to take everything you are to work, using it and be appreciated for it, and just being yourself and the power in that, I think that could have helped me drop a few of those wasted hours trying to achieve perfection.
Excellent advice about being true to yourself and authentic and genuine. No doubt your words have helped so many in our audience today as they venture into their careers, and those that have more senior profiles and are looking to transition one way or another. So I want to thank you once again, Åshild Hanne Larsen from Equinor, one of our gold sponsors, Equinor. So if you have not been over to the Equinor virtual stand, head on over, speak with the recruiters, ask for advice, speak to them about their core pillars and values in the organization, and start identifying, is this the right culture for you and the opportunities? You're asking great questions here. So keep it up with Equinor and the other 100 employers out there and the thousands of recruiters that they have connecting from around the globe, targeting global talent just like you. My name is Amber Wigmore-Alvarez. I'm Chief Talent Officer at Hired EFMD, and it's a great pleasure to be broadcasting day 2 of the EFMD Global Fairs live on campus at EAE Business School, Barcelona. Thank you all, and look forward to seeing you at the next live event that we'll have at 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. today. We have a CV clinic, and in addition, we have webinars happening throughout the day. So it's a lot of activities. Make sure that you're keeping track of that program and connecting with those recruiters that are live in the chat room and sharing your CV and video chatting and asking those questions, raising your hand. And that's what it's all about. So thank you once again, Åshild. It's been such a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And if any of you have follow-up questions or anything, you can find me on LinkedIn. So just feel free to reach out if there's anything I can do to help.
Thank you so much. All the best, everyone.